inside me, son of a god. I'm like a titan that's rising, oh, just you watch. I'm stepping into fate. There is no time to waste. I've got that lightning inside me. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. I'm cranking up on the throttle, victory is mine. Show you the harder the battle, harder I fight. I've come too far to quit. Step back, I'm going in. I'm cranking up on the throttle. This is how legends are made. This is how legends are made. This is how legends from the fire and stronger. This is how legends above it all, untouchable. A new animal.
Race fans, hello and welcome. It is Thursday night here for Above the Cushion, brought to you by the Automatic, live in the Uhlik Music Studio right here at the offices at 81 Speedway for FOE Enterprises. We are live streaming on Facebook and, as always, the YouTube channel. We need to thank Braylon over at Midwest Rat for getting the YouTube channel fixed up. She's got it all jazzed up over there. So go back. There's about 11 videos saved on the YouTube channel. There was some we did before we even started kind of promoting it. So if you want to go over to the YouTube channel and watch some of those, I think the very first one on there is Roger Glass joined us right here in the Uhlik Music Studio. So appreciate everyone for tuning in. Kind of need to get a couple things out of the way, news and notes as we get started here for weekly championship points racing this weekend. Kind of need to cover what happened Wednesday. We want everyone to know that we do not ever want to cancel events. The event was canceled by the High Limit Sprint Car Series. That's kind of just the product of the big shows that we do bring in here. We're not always the ones making the official call. So High Limit officials getting with some of the local meteorologists here in Wichita, and they made the decision to cancel. And, they're kind of just saving some of the drivers. There's drivers coming from all across the country to be here for the races. So they try to, do the best they can to save everyone some diesel fuel, travel expenses, things like that. So we did not want to cancel the race. We understand that, come Wednesday, it was beautiful and dry and kind of getting towards the end of the night. Really, we probably needed to water the track if we were going to go racing. So, again, our apologies for that. Like I said, it's kind of out of FOE Enterprises and 81 Speedway's control of what happened. So, we're trying to reschedule that event. The midweek money series is pretty tied up. But we're trying to get a date in there to see if we can make that work. Also working on a date for the canceled World of Outlaws late model show. Same thing. They're pretty booked up. We tried to, we actually work on that about midway through the year to get the schedule done for the next year. So trying to work on that, trying to get it done. We will announce those dates as soon as we have them, as we're working with the World Racing Group and then with the High Limit Sprint Car Series. I wanted to get that out of the way. I know there's been some questions, some things going on, but let's move forward to this weekend for weekly championship points racing at Humboldt tomorrow night. Like I said, weekly championship points racing going to be center stage over at the Hummer. Your Rays Metal Depot, USRA B mods, your Extrusions Inc. Midwest mods, and your Home Savings Bank factory stocks. Wilson Automotive mini stock and tuner, and your Army Contracting USRA modifieds. All 5 of your weekly championship divisions will be in action tomorrow night, Friday night at the Humboldt Speedway. Racing going to start at 8 o'clock. Pit gates open at 5, grandstands at 6, hot laps 7:30. We'll go green flag racing at 8 o'clock sharp. Pit passes $35, kids 5 to 10, 15, and kids 4 and under absolutely free at Humboldt Speedway. The general admission grandstands $12 for adults, seniors 65, and the military $10, and of course kids 10 and under absolutely free for Humboldt Speedway and FOE Enterprises. No outside food or drink allowed into the facility, and then of course clear bag policy is in effect for FOE Enterprises at both speedways. So if you have any questions on the clear bag policy, we'll get that shared again on the Facebook pages. But of course, we are following all of the large event places. They all have a clear bag policy, and we're following the same policy that schools and large events are following. So we hope to see you tomorrow night at Humboldt Speedway for weekly championship point series racing. Of course, in that home savings bank factory stock, Dallas Joyce is 3-0 for wins. We'll have to see if he can keep that streak going, or if we have an outsider come in and give him a challenge. He is our defending champion over there for the home savings bank factory stock division. And then moving right along to Saturday, weekly championship points right here at 81 Speedway. You're going to be live on racingdirt.com if you cannot make it out to the Speedway. Pit gate's going to open at 3, grandstands at 5, driver check-in by 5:30, hot laps at 6, and we're going to go green flag racing at 7 o'clock on the dot. Pit passes, adults 35, children 5 to 10, $15, and children 4 and under absolutely free in the pits here at 81 Speedway. General admission, adults $15, seniors 65 and older, and the military $12. Of course, children 10 and under absolutely free in the general admission grandstands here at 81 Speedway. No outside food or drink, and then the clear bag policy is in effect. Have been some questions about the seat backs. So seat backs are not allowed on special events only. So for high limit, World of Outlaws, no seat backs here, but for normal championship weekly points racing, seat backs, absolutely. So make sure you got them when you come through the gate, or you can rent them at the merch stand. Alternative Pest Management, USRA Modifieds, your Kansas Tow Company, USRA B-Mods, Rage Jerky Mini Stock and Tuners, and your Allied Energy and Battery Incorporated stock cars going to be center stage right here. So just 4 classes for Saturday night championship points racing. So hope you can be out here and take it in with us. We'd love it if you could be over at Humboldt with us on Friday and then right here on Saturday. We understand if you cannot make it off work in time to get over to Humboldt, but make sure Saturday you're right here at 81 Speedway to take it all in. And of course, again, racingdirt.com if you absolutely cannot make it to the Speedway here Saturday. Again, our sponsors, the Automatic, 3350 South Hydraulic right here in Wichita. Oil change, tires, brakes, all your general maintenance going to happen over at the Automatic. If you need a transmission or engine replacement, they can take care of that for you too. And if you're just needing to get some BG products, stop by and see our friends at the Automatic. Let them know that the racetrack sent you. Need to thank our great sponsor over at Uhlik Music for hooking us up. We got all the microphones, we got the board, have everything we've ever needed to have right here at the studio from Uhlik Music. If you're needing a guitar, keyboard, need some lessons, you need anything, stop by and see our friends over at Uhlik Music. Hammer Time going to happen right here at 81 Speedway, presented by the Rusty Nail on Saturday night from 5 to 6. So on special events where we're going to open early, the time does change, but weekly championship points racing on Saturday nights for Hammer Time, presented by the Rusty Nail, 5 to 6. $2 hot dogs, $1 off beers at the Tie Rod Tavern and Jack's Place concession stand. Hope you can make it out. Also want to kind of go the show last week. I want to apologize for that one. I had to kind of cut it short. The wind was getting a little crazy right here at the track, so I didn't want stuff to cut off on me. So I apologize to our sponsors and all of our great fans. The show last week, not quite up to the par that I'd like it to be. So I apologize for that, but we're going to get better and go forward. Of course, the weather's beautiful. We're headed into the weekend. And right here with me in the studio, Tim Belk. Man, I really appreciate you letting me. So I got invited to your Facebook pages, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. And then I posted that, who I was and what I did. And the response has been pretty overwhelming. I'm actually completely booked up to like the middle of June just from your Facebook pages, and we're going to get some pretty good racing stories, going forward. But tonight, we're going to get some good ones. You were kind of talking, before we got going on the show, and I was hoping we'd get some of that on the air, which we will. But I kind of want to just talk about, what are you doing in town, because you don't live here.
Well, I own some stores in different malls or sports collectibles.
Mhm.
So, like, I have 200 different teams that people can buy memorabilia for. And I always take a few months off in the spring and I buy. And I was up here in the Emporia area buying a big collection from a doctor up there. And I was canceling it. So I had a chance. I was going to come to the race last night and got rained out. So I kind of messed up. And I'm headed for Lakeside for the next 2 nights. But this is really an honor for me. As a kid, I remember coming up to 81 Speedway in the early 60s.
Mhm.
Charlie Lucky was my hero for a while, But, my dad was Jack Belk. I don't know if some of you might know him. He's in several of the Hall of Fames. He's in the High Banks Hall of Fame up here in the Carb and Joplin and Southwest Missouri. He won championships in Missouri, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Lakeside, Kansas City, Belleville, Free Fair, and won a lot of races.
Mhm.
25 championships, about 45 to 50 championships of some type or another in the 22 years. My dad was killed in a sprint car crash in Topeka in 71. But I have all this history.
Mhm.
So I didn't know what to do with it. So I started 3 Facebook pages. Well, actually, I started one in Joplin, which was you can go on these pages, they're free. You just go to the search bar at the top, punch in your favorite driver, track, car owner, and it'll bring up whatever we have. We're still adding stuff. I started this Joplin page about 13 years ago. There's over 8,000 people on it. It's racing in Joplin, Southwest Missouri, and the 4 states. It covers the whole 4-state area, and you can go on there for free, punch in stuff, and we're always trying to add to it. We still got thousands of programs and pictures we haven't added. Then there's one for Kansas we started about 5 years ago, Kansas Dirt Track Legends, and it's free. And I'm still accumulating things, putting it on there, and it's all free. It's just to share history and stuff. And then we got another one that's Vintage Super Modified Sprint Car Builders Group. Now, if you're building an old vintage car or just wanting to sell some parts, you can put it on there. There's no charge. It's all free. Try to help people finish these vintage race cars.
Mhm.
I myself, I have the original molds from Don Edmonds, and I can build the Edmonds bodies myself. And we, have them. And so we're involved in this racing stuff, vintage wise. But my dad started racing in 1950 at Green Top Speedway in Joplin. Then he won a lot of championships. There was a Southeast Kansas Racing Association, which was Girard and Pittsburgh. They started in 1951. My dad won that circuit. Then there was a Tri-State Racing Club, which was Girard, Pittsburgh, Kansas, Joplin, and Commerce, Oklahoma. He won that group too, 51. Plus, he won Girard, Joplin, and the Pittsburgh championship. So it got him off to a pretty good, you want to call it a career, but he kept it as a hobby. But he made money every year he raced. He was full time, worked for Jones Truck Lines and was a union boss down there with the Teamsters, and he always kept his job. And I mean, I slept. He started in 1950. I wasn't born until the mid 50s. I remember back to about 61. But I slept in a car. I had a second bedroom in the back seat of a 61 Ford station wagon. And Dad come out there one day. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm getting my stuff in order. I'm having to sleep back here most of the time." I had me a box for my keep track of points and stuff like that for Dad. And but we had a great, back in the day, they raced 4 and 5 nights a week because 81 Speedway started in 1953, and it's never missed a year, and that's special.
Mhm.
A lot of racetracks out there that have not continued, and we're very lucky to have someone like John Allen running this one. I think it's been a good compliment for him. But You know, my dad won championships in Tulsa in the 60 and 61 with the Bugs. And then he won the Belleville Free Fair in 63. He never won a race at 81 Speedway, but we loved coming here. I mean, a chance to watch Harold Leap and Frankie Lee's. Charlie Lucky was one of my favorites. I remember coming here in 62, and Charlie Lucky won that night. My dad was like fifth, I think. But I've just liked this place. And one time I was talking to Harold Lee some years later. I was a bowler. And Harold used to come around with his bowling team from his bowling alley in Wichita. And I got to bowl on the same lanes with him in Joplin, Missouri. I put a whooping on him, boy. He wasn't going to beat me at my house. I was bowler of the year down there in Joplin a few years. When he found out who I was, we had a great time because he was friends with my dad. And we just had a really good time bowling, you know, and it was a really fun experience for me to get to see him later. This was in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s, if I remember right. But we had a great time. But Harold, to me, was one of my heroes too, and Frankie Lee's. You know, my dad raced with him down in Tulsa when Harold won he won Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Wichita all in the same year. He was driving for Ray Cates. They had two different cars. He ran a Chevy up here at Wichita and then a Ford Chevy at Wichita and Oklahoma City. And he ran the Ford at Tulsa, and he was able to win all three championships, which was something.
Yeah.
That's when the Edmunds cars started coming in from California. Was pretty neat deal. That's when everybody went to the Tulsa, run them coupes and sedans until into 67. Then they went to the skinny 100-inch cars in 68. Teamed up with Wichita, Oklahoma City, and Joplin even got involved. And that's how the NCRA deal got started about 3 years later in 71. But I've seen a lot in this old game. I mean, I was traveling with my dad for 12 years, and I've seen him crash many times. He just crawled back in the next night and go after it. But one of my oldest memories of Jay Woodside, I was at the Jayhawk Nationals in 62, and Jay was fighting to win that race. And I remember I knew Jay because I was always bugging him for autographs in the pits. And he knew who I was. And he was fighting with Greg Weld. Roy Robbins was up front. My dad had started about 14th and had worked his way to 5th. But them guys were checked out. But anyway, on the last lap, Jay Woodside got tangled up with some guy and they flipped. Very rarely at a racetrack do you see a wreck where more than one driver go to the hospital. That wreck, Jay Woodside, I think that's why he limped the rest of his life, because he hurt himself pretty bad. If I remember right, it was Art Dischinger and Leon Spain also went to the hospital. There were several cars got involved in that, but I'll never forget that. But he had passed Roy Robbins. I remember Jay started about the third row. He passed Roy Robbins, was the Knoxville Nationals champion for the first year. And I remember he passed him and was fighting with Don Elliott. He had that big block Mopar, and it's Roy still owned car, fast car. Jay was in number 43. But that last lap, it was a mess. It was really bad deal. You know, it's just one of them things that happens. But very rarely do you see a wreck where three people go to the hospital. But I watched Jay. You know, he was always trying to get a better ride, which the best drivers did that. But he was always lined up along that fence. If he didn't have a ride, them car owners was looking over there. And if Jay showed up at a track, people didn't know him, you know, they'd ask my dad or somebody, get that guy, you know. They knew he'd get the most out of the race car. But I remember he was always over at Olympic Stadium on Sundays and Topeka on Friday nights. Then I think he was always over here on Saturdays. But I have a story as a kid I was going to tell. It's kind of funny. Al Weiland, my dad, drove for him. Al was out of Iola, Kansas. Also had the 1975 championship car that Roy Bryant drove. Harold Sparks owned it. He'd never owned a car, but he was always hanging around, you know. And he went and bought a brand new car from Nance, took it over to Al Weiland's garage in Iowa, Kansas, and dumped it in his garage. Now, 1975, Al Weiland lived to be 103, and I used to go visit him all the time in Iowa up till the time he died. He's been gone 6-7 years now, and I remember talking to him about it, and he said, "Oh man, they brought this fancy car over and dumped it in my garage. I never seen so many fancy parts, you know." He put that car together, and Roy Bryant and them went over and they won the 81 Speedway Championship. And Al Weiland had won championships everywhere, but he held that 81 Speedway at one of the top of his achievements because he thought the world of Walt McWhorter, Leap and Lees, and Lucky and them guys. They were really good. And anytime you seen them anywhere, it was always, I just loved coming up here because of the competition level, and my dad sure did also. But one time when I was a kid, I was about 12 years old. We were in Iowa. We had run Friday night at Oklahoma City, and Dad lost the motor. And so we had to drive to Iowa from Oklahoma City, put another motor in the car, and we were headed for Tulsa. Well, Al wasn't a very good driver, but he was a hell of a mechanic. He had a Cadillac towing the race car, and we're going along. And so I said, "Well, I'm going to ride with Al." His wife, Gladys Weiland, she had stayed home. So we're driving, you know, and towing along, and 75 highway south of Iowa and on the Kansas side, 2-lane road, lots of hills. He's trying to pass this semi. Well, he's going there, you know, and finally he whips out. Well, what I thought was the 4-barrel, it wasn't. He'd put it down up against the 4-barrel, and that old Cadillac, big old motor. Whoa. We're passing this semi, and all of a sudden, right in front of us on the hill, tops a semi head on.
Ooh.
I mean, all I'm doing, I'm grabbing the armrest in the seat. Al Weiland dropped the 4-barrel on that car. Sounded like 15 vacuum sweepers on steroids. I mean, whoa! That thing took off. He's trying to beat this truck. You can hear the truck beside us crimping the brakes, you know, and the truck in front of us is flashing these lights. I'm hanging out the window. I'm going, not yet, not yet. And finally I said, "Clear." He whips over. And it was something else. And then Al was not that great a driver. His wife Alice could actually drive better than him. But we went about five more miles up the road and pull over. And my dad walks up. He looks me in the face. He goes, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, you're a lot better driver than him, Dad." I think Dad drove the car the rest of the way to Tulsa. Al drove my car. Mom was back there, and I rode with Dad the rest of the way into Tulsa. But that's just a fun story from when I was a kid, you know. And Al was a wonderful mechanic. He was a auto shop mechanic for the Ford dealership, and then opened his own garage there in Iowa. And the man won a lot of championships with my dad from about 58 into the mid 60s. And I remember one night, and my dad was driving for Luther Brewer, and "Jack, let's go to Wichita. Let's go to Wichita." So they come over here, and they had twin 50s. And Dad got second in the first one and fourth in the second one. Frankie Lee's won. That was the night I met Bill Nelson. You know, Bill didn't win as many races as Leap and Lee's, but Bill was a great race car driver. I mean, to run with them guys like Leap and Lee's and all them, just like Grady Wade and Dale Reed, they didn't win a lot, but later on when they went to other places, they won lots of races because they learned to race with some of the best, you know. Mm-hmm. Harold Leap told me, he said 81 Speedway was a great place to race because he goes, the guys up here were so good, you could get in there and run hard and close at high speed, and you didn't have to worry about them running over you because you could stick it in there and just hope you don't run over them or they're going to take care of you, you know?
Yeah.
But that's how he goes. That's why this area is producing so many great drivers. And the same thing was with Joplin. we had a track like 81, but it was a quarter mile instead of more like a 3/8, bigger one.
Mhm.
And Emmett Hahn said that. Emmett raced down there in Joplin in 68. He was driving for Joe Cox in the Skinny. He was second in points that year down there. And Emmett said he enjoyed Joplin because you could get in there and it taught you how to race close and real hard, you know, because you could trust them guys. You know, Bud Hatch from Yates Center, Kansas. I don't know, many people might know him. He's in Yates Center. He wanted to race against the bigger guys. So he raced on Tuesday night in Joplin every week. And then that let him come up. He ran Tulsa. I think he ran Wichita 81 for a couple of years there in the early 70s. But Joplin, Ozark Speedway, how it got on Tuesday nights was my dad raced there, Bud Hatch. I don't know if you ever heard of Dale McDaniels. Larry McDaniels.
Yeah.
That was Larry's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dale was a pretty good race car driver.
Yeah.
He won a championship down there in Joplin in '69, was around the top all the time. And, you know, he was a pretty good racer. All them drivers got together and had a meeting. And they said, if you guys will run Tuesday night down here, that lets us go to Kansas City, Wichita, Tulsa, and run them special races or run the weekly shows there. So Joplin ran Tuesday night and the track lasted 25 years. And most of the drivers had to drive more than 60, 50, 60, 70 miles one way. But we had a lot of good locals down there too, like Dwayne Beckham and Fred Tullis, Bill Street, pretty good late model guy too. But
yeah,
I just have a lot of great memories. I remember we went up to the Belleville. My dad won that Belleville Free Fair thing, this big race they had at Belleville. And Art Dischinger, Jerry Weld, Don Elliott, Burke Holder, and them guys were there. I think Speedy Bill's car was there.
What year was this?
63.
63, okay.
Dad ran third the year before. Charlie Lucky won that one. I liked those Charlie. I thought that was the greatest race car driver name. The announcer at 81, it's Charlie Lucky. Just a great sounding name, you know. But I myself, I kind of stayed away from racing because I pulled my dad out of a car dead, and I'd seen him do that several times. I'd started racing go-karts about the time he raced, so I kind of got away from it a year or two after that. But over the years, I was promoting sports collectible shows in the malls. I did the mall in Salina, Westridge Mall in Topeka, Manhattan Town Center Mall. I had a store there, inline store for a decade. And I did all the shows in Texas, all over Missouri, Iowa, Arkansas. And every time I'd go to these shows, I'd always put out an album of the race car drivers. Like up in Wichita at Town West, I'd put a picture of Leap or Lee's on top, and people, oh, there's Harold Leap, you know. They'd come up and got them talking. But you'd be surprised how many people had closets full of stuff. And a lot of them just started giving me stuff. Or I said, well, I'll buy it from you. And sometimes I bought it. I even had people bring me old worn out laptop computers they couldn't use anymore that they updated. And I accumulated and started accumulating more and more stuff. And that's what I've started with these Facebook pages. I go through another box and I start adding things. But these pages are meant to help people with history, because I think the history of racing is the deepest part of it that keeps it alive. Just 20, 30 years from now, we should be able to go somewhere and look at these guys that's winning today. Because in the 90s, they seem to, in the 2000s, they seem to quit. You know, nowadays they do, but their programs disappeared.
Yeah, paper programs.
And most of the tracks, you can't hear the announcers.
Yeah.
And I go to these racetracks and people are there. Is that guy related to what's his face? Because the car, yeah, that's his grandson, you know?
Okay, yeah.
But that, I like 81 because you can sit up here and you can actually hear the announcers while the races is going on.
We also here at 81 have we're hooked into the FM radio station. So if you want to wear headphones or have a little transistor radio, 95.7, you can have your headphones right in. You can hear John Lowry and myself just as clear as day. We're working on it for over at Humboldt, but you know, being on the racing dirt helps. That kind of helped that deal
See,
out.
I
So,
didn't know that. So
yeah,
I'll
right.
probably have me a set of
Race. We call it Race Day Radio 95.7 right here at 81 Speedway. So just a little. All you need is just a little, just small little pocket radio thing. You can get it, at Walmart, Amazon, whatever, and headphones. And like I said, you can hear John Lowry or myself just clear as day.
Yeah, I remember 1964. I was at Humboldt, Kansas. I think that was the year that track opened.
I'd have to get with
Bud,
Whitworth or Allen or John Allen could tell us for sure.
I think it was the first year. Bud Hatch was a good friend of mine. I was friends with him up till his death. It's been over 10 years ago. I forget dates on people when they die, especially when they're friends of mine. But Bud gave me a picture of him. He had 2 of his cars at Humboldt. And I remember going up there because Yates Center was just about 20 miles from Humboldt.
Mm-hmm.
So Bud raced there all he could. And that track there has been doing well too. That's a good little facility and good place. And it's got a good following. And that Iola, Al Weiland, my dad drove for, is just about 20 miles from there too, I think. And they're 30. And Al helped a lot of the local boys around there, like the Folk Boys
mm-hmm.
and the SIGs.
Yep.
And they still, to this day,
yep,
they are very appreciative of what Al did for them, helping them just with simple things on a race car.
Well, every Friday night we see some of the Folk family and some of the SIG family, and love having them all there. Yeah, absolutely.
I understand they got one of the grandkids. There's so many of them I can't keep track, but they got a new one started here the other day, and I remember reading one of the Folks pages. They're all excited about this new boy starting out. So I'm kind of looking forward to going up to Humboldt and seeing another one of them guys run.
Yep. But yeah, lots of history over there at Humboldt. I've been trying to get some of those, some of that racing history on the show, but like you said, tons of grandkids. I've been trying to get a hold of the SIGs forever, and they're like, oh, I can't this week. We got basketball. I can't this week.
I got a few
got
pictures.
This one, so
I got a few pictures of them on the track. This is before it had walls and stuff.
Yeah,
I'll send you a few pictures of Humboldt. So.
Yeah, we need to get
some on the show. That'll help.
If you go over there to Humboldt, and you kind of walk around, there's some pictures of the original drawings that someone did. They did the drawings of the track, how far the distances were when they made the track. So I need to get over there and get some. When I'm over there Fridays, I need to get pictures and get them posted on the Facebook page. So I'll try to get over there early this week and get some of that posted, because the engineering drawings that are over there, they're awfully cool to see of how the track started out. We've had to change it over the years a little bit, and of course the wall's been added and the pits and stuff, but I'll get some of those posted as well.
Oh yeah, they've done a good job. I like it when you get up on the top of them containers, you can see the races. That's a good addition. I've seen that they do over there, and I've noticed they've kind of done it here too. But I've just got a wonderful history of 81. It's been one of my favorite tracks, even though my dad never got to race here weekly. And it's always been one of my favorite tracks. I remember a story. I think it was 63. We were coming over here to race. Might have been 64. On the radio when we were coming in, all the Wichita guys had 4 letters in their name: Leap, Lees, Wade, Reed. Well, that weekend they talked to Kansas City guys: Greg Weld, 4 letters; Kenny Weld, Jerry Weld, and my dad was Jack Belk. Well, on the radio it said, $100 extra to the winner. Anybody without 4 letters that can win. I think Walt McCorder won that night. It puts motivation in Walt. I always liked old Walt. I was a kid going in the pits. He was always really nice, That's what I liked about the guys up here. If you walked up and saw Leap and Lees and McCorder, them guys and my dad in a bundle after the races, you couldn't tell which one of them won. They're all sitting there with grins on their faces. They just had the time of their lives, but you couldn't tell which one won by looking at them. That's what the 60s did for me. With them guys loved to race. My dad had absolutely no fear in a race car. I pulled him out a couple of them. He had 2 or 3 really horrible wrecks in Topeka. We thought he wasn't going to walk out. He just walked out of there. sometimes he'd wake up an hour later. And the night he died, some stuff got in the cockpit with him, and debris is part of it, And but that's just part of racing. You take it, and everybody always rinse your cars, check them out before you race the second year. Check out your bolts, look at all your things, because just because a part says it's a high performance or a racing part, it's made in the same factories as all them other ones, and everything has a limit. And I remember when they didn't put roll cages, and IMCA wouldn't allow roll cages. And
in the sprint car.
Yeah, in the sprint car circuit, and the super modifieds did. It took, Judd Larson was a good friend of my dad's, and he was killed in Reading, Pennsylvania on the opening lap. And Red Regal, both of them died. That's another one of them wrecks where they took two guys to the hospital and neither one of them survived. Very rarely did you see wrecks where more than one person went to the hospital. And when it did, it's usually pretty bad. But then in 1969, Kenny Greitz had got a brand new Edmunds sprint car. And that boy was shining and winning lots of good races, running really well. He won the Knoxville Nationals with a roll cage. Knoxville always allowed roll cages. And 2 weeks later, he went to the IMCA event in Lincoln, and the IMCA made him remove the cage. And he had a wreck that night and lost his life. And I think the Greitz family ended up suing, which led to roll cages on all the IMCA sprint cars now, which was a good thing. It's evolution. Just like my dad died in 71, was a fully caged sprint. But then back then they didn't. Now they have the enclosed cockpits and the wings. If my dad would have had that, I think he might have survived his wreck.
Yeah.
So you learn, but the biggest thing, we found out that there was a part failure on my dad's car. A bolt actually snapped, which instigated the crash to take place. And it makes you wonder, you always check your bolts because fatigue level, things like that. Always check the seat belts, your bolts on them seats, put new bolts in them, things like that. Don't run with old seat belts because they will break. You'd be surprised how much centrifugal force. We had a guy down there in Joplin one night, flipped his car, and he's halfway as high as a telephone pole, 30 foot away from his car. And he broke the bolts on his seat belts and it threw him out of the car. It happens. It's just part of the game. But
to kind of go back to the beginning, how did your dad even get involved in racing? Because that wasn't a big deal back in the 50s even.
The Mighty Midgets.
Okay.
Angelo Howerton, Angie Howerton, Jackie Howerton's father. He traveled around, Buzz Barton, guys like that. They traveled around with this midget circuit. And my dad would always go watch some races. And 1947 was the first race in the Joplin area. They come down and run at Haddon Park, right down there in the park, just a flat track. And Dad went over and watched that race. And so that's how he got involved. Was he was like most guys. It's like Jay Woodside, when he started following Harold Lee, Frankie Lee's. He couldn't get away from him. He was idolizing the better drivers to learn from them. That's what my dad did, was following like Angelo Howerton, Buddy Cagle, guys like that in the midgets in the 40s. And, Buzz Barton. And that's what got him started. But he watched the best guys, kind of idolized them, is how that got going. My dad, Larry Phillips, I don't know if you've heard of him, the late model.
Oh, yeah.
The winningest late model drivers in history. He ran modifieds for 4 years in Joplin. And him and my dad were really good friends. And Larry followed, my dad's like 10 years ahead of Larry. And my dad's in his prime. These other guys coming up, there were some really good ones. Dean Roper.
I never heard of that one.
He's 3-time USAC late model champ in the early 80s. Cut his teeth there in Joplin in the modified. But they run on Tuesday nights. They could do that, and they could still on the weekends go to, like Larry and Dee, to go run late models at Springfield. They had a flat quarter-mile asphalt track. Then they had other ones up there too. but that's what they ran. Then later on, Springfield went to a half-mile dirt, But them guys, that's one reason I think Larry becomes such a good driver. He was a late model, and he run modifieds also. And Larry was top 5 in points a couple of years, but never did win a championship. But he won several features.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, I can probably say my dad had a winning record against him. But my dad didn't run late models either, so I got to give Larry credit that way. It's kind of fun that way. But I was really proud to see how Larry McDaniels, him being Dale's son.
Yeah.
I didn't get to know Larry really well, but I seen him race several times against Larry. And I remember one time Larry won Hutchison. I happened to be there. Larry Phillips, and Larry runs second.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to Larry, and I said, "You know that's Dale McDaniel's son? The look on his face, because that's his son." And I think they may have talked after that because I don't think he realized it.
Yeah.
He goes, "That's where he got his deal from." He knew, that had something to do with
Mm-hmm.
that. But Larry was my dad was killed in 71. He was making a deal at that point with Midway Machine Company, was going to sponsor Larry, and Dad was going to start running late models the next year, but it never got to that point.
Never got there.
So they were going to make that adventure. I remember Dad in 1964, Wee Willie Crane, hell of a race car driver out of Springfield. He won some races up there at I-70, hell of a race car driver. Won a lot of championships in Joplin in southeast Kansas in the modifieds. Hell of a race car driver. They were trying to put my dad. I remember Mopar came to our house. Jack will put you in a brand new car. You and Willie Crane to be teammates. Now this is 64. Dad said, "No, I don't want to do it." He goes, "Them old cars are heavy and slow." He goes, I just don't like that type of racing." He had just won the Belleville Free Fair, It's a big races up here. He was having a good time. But later on, when the big blocks come in there in the late 60s and stuff, in the early 70s, late models really became a really fast cars. And Dad was going to make that change. But I remember that was one of the stupidest things I ever heard my dad say that I didn't agree with. "Oh, take it." And watching Richard Petty win in a Mopar every week on TV, was kind of like, "Dad, what are you doing?" But he just didn't. He liked the fast open wheel cars. That's just the way it was. And Joplin just run bombers, street tire cars through the 60s. Then about 68, 69, they started bringing the big tires in with the big motors. And it evolved, and late models took over Joplin in 1970. Joplin didn't have the Metroplex Wichita has. And so the modifieds went out after about 3 weeks in 1970. They were super modified, same NCRA cars, and they quit. And late models, all the guys down there own salvage yards or worked at them.
Yeah.
So they could just go get them a car. One of the top guys down there, I won't say his name just to be honest, but it was number 14 car. Fred Tullis was the driver. But he bought a brand new Chevelle and he burned it so he could change it in on insurance, build him a brand new late model. He beat everybody for about 2 years.
Yeah.
But, racing, when the super modifieds came in, the cost of racing like tripled. And the guys down there had never seen them skinny supers before. And all them Edmunds cars were coming in. And it was a major money thing. And then the late models took over, but Chick Shattuck was Joplin. He stayed with it and ended up winning a Tulsa championship in 71 with a super modified. And my dad continued to race, won Muskogee. And then Dad was in a good fight with Chick for the championship. Him and Benny Taylor was fighting. Dad had come up in 69 and bought a Nance car.
Okay.
Darrell Johnson, Midway Machine Company, bought a Nance car, the Brown Hound from 1969 that Aaron Madden drove. And they took it down to Tulsa. A lot of people might remember number one. It was brown. Most of Nance's cars were.
Yeah.
And they took it down there. Dad run it in 70 and 71. And he was fighting for the championship. And he got driver of the month in June, was High Point man for the month of June. And just past Chick Shattuck, because him and Chick were close. they were good friends.
Yeah.
Chick was over there giving him hell because he'd passed him in points, and he was, they were having a blast. And the next Friday night, my dad got killed in Topeka, or had his fatal accident in Topeka. But it was just, it was satisfaction to know my dad was still winning when he went out.
Yeah.
But he had so much fun. The man absolutely loved to race. He lived by the steering wheel and died by it.
Yeah.
But
you've talked about the Edmonds thing. How did you come to have the mold, and how many do you build?
Well, we probably built 25 to 30 now.
Okay.
People also, I'm missing a tailpiece or I'm missing a hood.
Yeah.
Our nose. We do that. I sent a couple to Australia here about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
There's these guys restoring these race cars, and they just love it.
Yeah.
And like this vintage groups now. This is great. Them guys, they don't go out there and race. They just love going back out on that racetrack and running. And it's a great thing, but I've been collecting this stuff ever since my dad died, and I just kept collecting. And I stayed out of the cars myself, and because I knew it was just so addictive. I couldn't. I mean, I get in a street car. I had a 58 Thunderbird. I had to run 140 mile an hour. It wouldn't do it till I got big enough tires on it, and I got 140 mile an hour. I had to do it. I just had, you know what I mean? It was in me, and I just stayed away from it. And I finally started racing myself after I was 50 some years old, and I won a 305 sprint car race. Last race I ran a sprint car, I won at Springfield, Missouri. But I was able to say I did it. Yeah. And it was somebody else owned the car, asked me to drive it. I got in about 6 times, and I was actually able to win one. But boy, I tell you, it was hard for me to stop.
Yeah.
Because I could see I should have been doing this all along, I felt, because I had a knack for setting up cars. And how I got into it was a friend of mine got financially in trouble. He sold me a $10,000 race car for about $5,000 modified. So I took it home. I called my brother, Randy Belk. Randy's won a few modified titles down there. Randy, I just bought a modified. Oh, he cussed me up one side. You dummy. I said, get over here. If you don't drive it, I'm going to. So I dug out my dad's setup sheets.
Okay.
Got the old floor jack out with a little socket. You
yeah.
know? Right rear come up about 2 inches for the left rear. So I knew I had that and got the front end set like I thought. My brother went out. They did not transfer from the B to the A's at that time.
Okay.
Kept guys from coming in from out of town and parking and then coming back next week and beating people. So
okay.
He won his heat race in the B. Randy said, Tim, don't touch the car. He goes, it's fast. I'm like, okay. So I took it home, put new rubber on it. Got the old grooving iron out. And
yeah.
I learned how to groove tires with Dad in Howell Island. I was a little kid. You're going to be around here. You're going to do something. So Randy went out the next week and won the heat, started third row inside and run off with a feature. And it was like a big thing for me and my brother because it's the first car I really ever owned that was a full-size car.
Yeah.
And then I was able to win in that car myself a couple months later after I drove it 2 or 3 times. And I ran about 80 times, and that was enough for me. Yeah. And I got away from it. Yeah. But I was in my 50s, too. I took a couple of tumbles and was pretty sore the next day. And I thought, if I ever pull these like my dad, they're going to bury me right there. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. I still today enjoy going through the pits, finding people that you can tell they can't afford to race. And just look at their car. Sometimes they got their shocks or springs in the wrong places. You can help them out a little bit or get their front end right. And you'd be surprised they come back with a smile on their face. Yeah. A lot of these guys overthink their car. Like Luther Brewer. I don't know if y'all heard of Luther. Rayleigh Goodwin. He had the T Coupe, won the Nationals. He sold it to Jack Cunningham, and Thad Dozier won the Knoxville Nationals in '67. My dad drove for him, and that's who he was driving for when he come up here and run that 100 lapper that time in '64. And I had my modified, and we'd run second and third 5, 6, 7 weeks. We couldn't beat these 2 guys. I'm like, man, I'm going crazy. I called Luther. said, Luther, what can I do? He asked me what all I did. And he goes, put the car back where you know it's fastest and only make one adjustment. So I got everything back. We run second again, just like we always had. He said, now you think you're back where you was your fastest? He goes, take a turn out of both, a half a turn out of both front sides, on both front, then put a half a turn in the rear. So I didn't say nothing to my brother, and I put him in the car. Boy, this car's getting better for a bike, Tim. What'd you do? I didn't do nothing. Maybe it's just a track.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wasn't going to tell him nothing. So he goes out and wins his heat race. Track was drying off, so I took another half turn out of the front and put another half turn in. He won 3 weeks in a row. I'm going to call Luther. He said, don't ever overthink your race car. When you make these adjustments, if you're close, make one adjustment at a time. He goes, all you did was change the rake in that car, raise the back end up, help load the rear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said it just helped. And the car actually turned under power better when we lowered the front end. We were close. We just needed a little bit of rake.
A little bounce.
and just things like that. It's Luther Brewer. I have 100 emails from talking to him over the years. He was a wonderful man. He actually promoted the Topeka racetrack, the fairgrounds up there, and was the promoter the night my dad died, you know, or was killed. And I've become very close friends with him. And Ray Lee Goodwin drove for him. And Ray Lee Goodwin is one of the greatest ambassadors this sport's ever had. We just lost him a couple of years ago. He's in all the Hall of Fames. And the man's just a wonderful guy. I miss talking to him every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I talk to him all the time. I miss old Luther. We're losing a lot of these guys, but y'all are welcome to go on these pages. They're there for free. Kansas Dirt Track Legends and Racing in Joplin, Southwest Missouri, and the 4 states. When you go on them pages on Facebook, just go to the top, put in the track, car owner, driver's name, or even car number, if you might try. And you'd be surprised what we've got on there. And we need help too. We have some cars we can't identify.
Okay.
And I've had little old ladies call me and say, that's old Joe, you know, and it's amazing. And I've had young kids call me trying to find pictures of their grandpas and stuff. And sometimes I'm able to help them. And that's really gratifying. Just something about 81 Speedway, and somebody that's never been here. If you ever come here, down where their food place is, they have a little lounge.
So we call it Tie Rod Tavern. That's the bar here at the Speedway.
On the wall in there, they have history pictures. And I thought I was good. Okay. I'm probably one of the best historians in the 4-state area. But there's some in there that still stump me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go in there every time I come down here and take some looks. Like there's one in there, Charlie Lucky, with dual tires on his right rear with wing. Now, they only run wings in 61 down through here because they banned them in 62 at Knoxville, Kansas City, and Topeka. Now, Wichita, I don't know about that. So maybe they run some wings down in here around then. I'm not sure. Or maybe Dodge City. A lot of that's 50s, and
that gets into a C. Ray Hall or Melissa Powers question. Both of them, I probably at some point need to get both of them on here.
Another good page too is Racing from the Past. It's not on Facebook, but it's a website. Racing from the Past. Bob Lawrence runs it. It's a wonderful page. The days of free and easy has come around. That's why I went on to Facebook, because people seem to generate to that a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But if you like looking at websites and you want to get on a real good one that's got really great history, Racing from the Past is another one.
Okay.
That's really good.
Racingfromthepast.com.
Yeah, and there's another page too. It's Kansas Antique Racers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's great. Another great Facebook page up here that covers all the vintage races. They've got a lot of good history. And there's another one. I apologize for not writing the name down. Dodge City. I apologize, Roger. I don't remember the name of it, but it's They have a page now that covers some of the Dodge cities doing really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I used to read stuff on there all the time that I don't know because it's far out there in Kansas. You know, Davy Ross was from that area out there. Was one of my favorites. I saw him run a few times, and I don't know why. I just started watching him. I think it was the way he attacked the cars in front of me. He was a hard driver, clean driver, and that caught my attention. That's what caught me about Frankie Lee's.
Mm-hmm.
He always attacked the car in front of him, but it was always in a clean way.
Yeah.
I think that's what why people like my dad, he won several most popular driver awards down there in Joplin, the sportsmanship awards, and he was always clean driver. You know, there was always these mean guys like Harvey Shane. Oh, Harvey was kicked out of about every racetrack, Southwest Missouri, and I think they kicked him out of Tulsa too down there. One night in Arkansas, he got mad. They kicked him out, and he went down the road and hooked a chain on the telephone pole and took the power deal, took the power out for a whole section, so nobody got to race. But that's just good old stories, you know. How Harvey was become pretty good later on. I think he got into the BCRA Hall of Fame. He won a race or two.
Yeah.
Probably finally settled down and was an okay guy after that.
Before the show, you were kind of talking about, of course, our very own John Allen is getting inducted into the Belleville High Banks Hall of Fame. But you brought up a Hall of Fame that I didn't know about in Chapman,
well,
Kansas.
It's not a Hall of Fame. It's just a racing museum.
A racing museum. Sorry,
it's in Chapman, Missouri.
Chapman, Missouri. Okay.
15 miles. Manhattan, Kansas is west of Topeka and then a little north. Chapman's just past Riley. They're 15 miles.
Okay.
It's probably 40, 50 miles from Salina.
So it's Chapman, Kansas, not Missouri. Chapman, Kansas.
Chapman, Kansas.
It's
east of Salina, 40 miles probably. And then Topeka, probably about 60 miles. And the museum just sits about a mile off the road. When you take the Chapman exit, keep looking on the right, you'll see a old NASCAR late model sitting out there. Man, they got some history in that place. I went in there and they had all the Still family who owned the championship car at Topeka donated and photocopied all the results they had from the early to mid 60s. My dad was second in points at Topeka in 62, 63, 64. And Don Elliott drove the car that won. And then Ken Williams drove it for him in 65. And Ken was also killed at Topeka Fairgrounds in turn 4, same spot as my dad 2 years before my dad did. But that Chapman Museum, it's wonderful. It's not a Hall of Fame, but it's a great place. Go through there, and they've got history in there. The Manhattan track, they cover more of Kansas than I thought. And I'm going to get with them and supply them with Pittsburgh and Girard stuff to help them fulfill that a little better. Now, Belleville has a great museum too.
Yeah.
But it's more covered there. They had that midget thing up there. It more covers just their thing, but it covers other things too.
Yeah.
But that Chapman's well worth your visit if you take a Sunday drive somewhere and want to go somewhere. Call ahead because they have some seasonal stuff, I think. So I think Belleville does the same thing.
Oh, close down.
Chapman, Kansas, Chapman Racing Museum.
Chapman Racing.
Well worth the visit. I go down there. I'm in there 3 hours, and I find stuff that I didn't know. They got tracks by the folders, and you can go through there and find really, really neat stuff. All the Jayhawk National results are in there, and I was able to fine tune a lot of my stuff. But
you're right now in life. You're doing the collectibles, the baseballs, the cards, whatever. How did you? Was that a thing as a kid? You collected cards. How'd you even get into the card or the memorabilia collecting scene?
I went in service for a little while and I got out, and I was a pretty talented kid. I could bowl. I was bowler of the year in Joplin a few years. I was pretty good with pull stick. I won a lot of pull tournaments. I'd go out and bar some night and make me money.
Yeah.
Well, I got to traveling around, and I worked around with truck docks. My dad worked for Jones Truck Lines, and I could go down there in the afternoon and make $20 in a couple of hours fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got to traveling around. I had a 67 Mustang.
Okay.
I had a bowling ball and a pool stick. And if I didn't make it that way, I'd go down to the local truck dock.
Okay.
And I'd $40 for a load, you know,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
I could make me a couple $100. Well, I was in Chicago, and I just won a bowling tournament or a pool tournament at this little bar, won $100. And I asked this girl, I said, "Is there a motel around here? I ain't slept in 36 hours. I got to get some sleep." "Oh, yeah, go down the road." I go down there and I look up, and it says baseball cards, room 1 or 2, Saturday. I'm like, wow. Well, I had a box in my trunk with a bunch of 53s and 54 tops in it,
Okay.
you know, Mickey Mantles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. And well, we did. I got me a room. They had a restaurant there that was open. So I went and sit down. There was this little old man sitting there, and he's like, he's got baseball cards. So I ordered me a big breakfast. I'm going to go crash. I got to talking to him, and he was putting on a little show in there. And the phone rang, and he had to go talk to the phone. And this guy's in his 70s, you know, and he come back moaning. Oh, little B kid, you know, his grandson. He was supposed to come help me. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm having this baseball card show." And I said, "You know, I got some ball cards." I went out and got them, brought them in. He goes, "Wow, these are really good." He goes, I said, "You need any help with this deal?" So he had a room in there, is about 25, 30 foot long,
Okay.
10 foot deep. And man, we got up next morning, the place was packed. So we had plexiglass, all we had. We was putting them cards under there. I'm selling them like crazy. And this lady walks in. I said, he goes, "Anything comes in now, you got to tell me about it before you buy it." I said, "This lady, I've got enough already. We had stuff." Well, she goes, I said, "Tell you what, ma'am, you got stuff for sale?" She was telling me about it. So I opened the door behind us, and I threw this green, I think it was green towel on the ground. Turn around the building till you see that green towel. So I walked outside. She had 5 banana boxes, these big boxes.
Yeah.
I opened the first one. It was 1958, 59, 60. Looked like they were brand new. I'm like, back then they weren't worth a whole lot.
Right.
The next box was like 62, 3 and 4. And it went right up to early 70s. I said, "Well, why are you selling these?" She goes, "My husband passed away." And she goes, "I want my closet back." Well,
Okay.
I had $250 in my pocket. And I got to thinking about it. And she said, "I want $200. I paid her.
Yeah.
I did probably 400 out of that stuff. There was 7 Bob Uecker rookies was the first thing. I know high numbers.
Okay.
If anybody knows anything about baseball cards, high numbers is it. There were 762 Mantles. And holy cow. I'm like, well, what happened that weekend, the guy that run the place, he come in, he goes, "You guys come back the next day." He goes, "Your rooms are free, everything. You have free food." The restaurant was packed. So, and this guy came in, had I think it was Easy Haul place down the street. And he goes, I said, I can't haul all this stuff in my car. So he hooked me up with my Mustang, a little trailer. I had that trailer. It was this high,
Yeah.
from front to back. My 67 Mustang, he had to put a Hyther hitch on it to keep it from dragging the ground.
Okay.
I made it all the way back to Joplin. I remember I had to buy tires, so I wore the tires out. The front end was up tight. Was where the tires.
Oh, wow.
I got back to Joplin, and I got to thinking about this. I did all that, and I had $850 when I got home. That's how much money I turned at that deal, $1, $2. Mm-hmm. Now I think about how many Mickey Mantles and stuff, and Bob Gibsons and rookies and stuff. Oh, I sold that for $2, you know. but I got to thinking, wow, I got to try this down here.
Yeah.
So I went to Tulsa, rented a place. There was people lined up out the door. The cops had to come. You can only put 50 people in this room at a time. So I started doing more and more. And then people, "Hey, can I set up with you?" Just like that old man did me in Chicago. So finally, I rented a Ramada Inn, had 50 tables. I don't even have to set up, but I did because that's why I started doing it.
Yeah.
And finally, North Park Mall in Joplin came up and said, "Can you do this in the mall? It's free." I had like an 80 table show in the mall. These guys are paying me $30 a table.
Mm-hmm.
They're making a killing. The place is packed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to rethink my employment here. But I'd worked at Georgia Pacific and I retired. I had enough to retire. I'd worked about 15 years and I'd worked enough hours to get 20 years in.
Okay.
So was vested and got a retirement. So I went and quit and I started promoting these shows. And I had every mall within 300 miles of Joplin at one time or another. I even went to Houston, Texas. I did some malls in Florida around Lakeman for a time when a friend of mine that promoted got sick. But I had every week or 4 times a year, I'd be in like Westridge Mall, Topeka, Salina Central Mall.
Mhm.
I'd go out to Hayes. I even did a little mall out in Dodge City, had that movie theater. I can't remember the name of it. But we did really good out there. You know, I didn't do it for a couple of years, but we rotated around. But I got the big malls. I had Mid Rivers Mall, St. Louis, Merle Hay, and Des Moines, and the bigger malls. And we every weekend that's what we did. And then they wouldn't let me work through the Christmas season because we took all their money.
Yeah.
So I started putting the stores in during Christmas.
Okay.
And I got to where I had 5 stores at a time. And finally, why don't you stay full time? So I did with a few of them, and that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to travel anymore. And the shows that I did, I think the one I was doing, it's still happening in Topeka. Some other guys are running it now. And Springfield, Missouri was one of my oldest. It's still going on now. But that's how I got started and all that. And that's how I actually accumulated so much stuff. Because my dad's stuff just went up to 71. But I always put them albums out, and people
Would
look
see,
out, that's
them.
that's
Yeah.
Harold Leap or Greg Weld, you know. And I get to talking to them, and I'd buy collections from them, and I did that just for fun.
Yeah.
And I still to this day, I've got boxes that I need to get down in. There's stuff in there. I actually found some original pictures of the Alabama gang
Okay.
that I don't know how. Some of them boxes, the Joplin tornado hit us pretty hard.
Yeah.
But I was smart enough to put them things in deals and I sealed them shut.
Yeah.
And I thank God I did.
Yeah.
And I only lost one deal. Down there was about 50 autographed pictures of Mickey Mantle, Warren Spahn,
Oof.
Enos Slaughter. I lost them.
Yeah.
And I never have found them. But my racing stuff, I don't know. I spent a little extra time on them on them cedar chests and the army lockers.
Yeah.
And but I didn't lose very little of that stuff. Some of the papers got wet, but one of my houses down there was just totally destroyed. So we had to totally rebuild it. And my garage was gone. But that's how I got in. It was doing that. And it turned into a career for me. So now I have a full-time store in Joplin, One Stop Sports at North Park Mall. You know, I'm 68 years old now. I can't work 100 hours a week anymore, but I still work 60.
Yeah.
But I'm part of another store in Kansas City I'm involved in, and there's a few other ones I'm involved in. We've got partnerships because prices are different at each place.
Yeah.
So I don't put, Tim's got that $20 cheaper in Joplin.
Right.
So we try to respect
Even
each
it
other.
out. Yeah.
But we have I work a lot with the Kansas City Chiefs too on a lot of their charitable stuff. Anthony Davis Charities.
Mhm.
I'm a big supporter of them. They sold to one of my business partners here a while back. So I work with them all I can.
Yeah.
And I do. I've got lots of autographs. Go in my store at any time. There's probably 40 autographed jerseys hanging in there.
Wow.
But you can buy teams. I carry 200 plus teams, like the top 100 colleges.
Yeah.
If you're an Alabama guy or KU guy, you're going, I got a racing shirt. I usually have some kind of shirt. Well, it's like my billfold. I left it out in the car. It's a Green Bay. I probably got Missouri socks on. But I just do that to help sports fans. That's how I got into that. But I have racing stuff in my store. Some.
Yeah.
I've got some old original World Outlaw prints that they sold.
Oh, wow.
They're them 16 by 20s.
Yeah.
I was in Lincoln, Nebraska at Eagle Raceway back, I don't remember, early 90s. And Guy said, Tim, we're having this big racing auction up by Columbus, Nebraska. I'm like, so we tear up there. Nobody showed up.
Yeah.
And these original prints from the World of Outlaws were there. So I bought everything they had. And the guy had hundreds and hundreds of programs. I scarfed them all up, everything I could get. And, you know, that's how I was always watching. You'd be surprised. You go out here if you're ever out in the country, like one mistake a buddy of mine made, Oklahoma City, they called them Marcar.
Marcar?
That
Okay.
was their group.
Oh, okay.
But to someone that don't know nothing about racing, doesn't know what that is.
Gotcha.
So I got to doing that, and I'm like, well, you bought them out there. They didn't have them. Oh, yes, they did. He asked, you got any race car pictures? Get away from these funny names.
Yeah.
And there was a deal like that in Edmond, Oklahoma. A guy had a whole bunch of Oklahoma City stuff. And I asked the lady, I said, she goes, no, but people keep asking me for Marcar. What is that? And I said, well, that's the race car deal from Oklahoma City. Her eyes got real big. She took me back in the room. She goes, I haven't got into this closet yet. And it was a whole bunch of Oklahoma City.
Oh, wow.
It's just, she goes, I know what a race car is, but I'd never heard of Marcar.
Yeah.
You know? And it was like, well, like Tulsa Speedway, it's all marked Tulsa Speedway.
Gotcha.
You know, 81 Speedway has 81 Speedway on the front of the program.
Right.
People know that. And I wondered, I've noticed that, and I thought, boy, proper advertisement. That's just like if I was going to open a racetrack in a town that never been there before, say it's in Wichita, it'd be Wichita Speedway. You know where it's at. Or
Right.
I put a different name on it, you know.
Yeah.
That don't confuse your people.
Yeah.
And savor that history. That's what I've loved about this track. I just love this racetrack up here and the people, the type people they are, the competition that comes out of there. And knowing Harold Leap, I got to know him bowling a little bit. And Frankie Leaves is probably one of the best dry slick drivers I ever seen.
Yeah.
He'd go through the dry slick like it wasn't even there. He knew where he got bite. And the next time he's in the gas, it was getting bite when he knew where it was at.
Right.
He didn't overdrive that car through that stuff, and he just run off and leave people.
Yeah.
He went on other nights too when it was messy and wet.
Oh, yeah.
But it's been a fun life. I wouldn't trade my childhood, even though my dad died in a race car. I wouldn't trade my childhood for nothing.
Yeah. You know, with the sports collectible stuff, everyone's got one thing. What was your biggest score or maybe the most prized thing in the collection?
Well, Joplin had the Yankee Farm Club.
Okay.
The Joplin Miners. You know, Joplin's mining towns around there.
Yeah.
They called them, it was, minor league.
Yeah.
But they called them the Miners. Well, Mickey Mantle played for the Joplin Miners.
Okay.
And he just grew up over in Commerce, Oklahoma. It's 20 miles from there. And he was born south of there in Oklahoma. But this little old lady walked in my store one day. And she goes, you're Tim Belk, right? Baseball guy. And I said, yeah. She goes, I have something I think you want. So I went to her house with her. And she had a signed ball from the Joplin Miners with Mickey Mantle on the sweet spot, which is almost impossible to find.
Okay.
I'm like, oh my God, we sold it for $24,000 to a guy in New York.
Wow.
That's just one thing.
Yeah.
A lot of time monetary value is not deal.
Right.
This deal I just bought was about $27,000, I think is what's going to be the dollar figure on it.
Yeah.
It was a big collection the doctor had. Americus, Kansas. He lived out west of there. He's going to Florida.
Okay.
And he ran into me in the Topeka Mall. He said 15, 20 years ago and kept my phone number and called me. And that's one of the customer bases I built.
Yeah.
And so I went out there and I can't handle this myself. He goes, well, you know the people that can. So guy flew into Kansas City, rented a car and drove over, and we made the deal today, But I had a guy come in with a Babe Ruth ball one time, and we was able to get it authenticated. Nowadays, the gangsters, as I call them, the authenticators like PSA, DNA,
Okay.
Global, JSA. They're like, to me, they're like gangsters. They run Chicago and LA. They got the deal now to where anytime you buy an old autograph, you want to call them companies and have them authenticate it.
Yeah.
Because there's so much fake stuff going around now. We fight it constantly.
Yeah.
So much of it's fake. Always get stuff authenticated. It's worth the extra $50 to $100 to get that stuff done.
Yeah.
But I've had several. I had a Mickey Mantle rookie we sold for $37,000 one time.
Wow.
A lot of them things like that people get. And I said, look, I don't want to buy this from you for 20 grand and you see me sell it 40 next month.
Right.
Let's put it on that deal and come to an agreement on a percentage.
Yeah.
And that's how I built my people have called that guy just did it for a percentage. You see the sell price,
Right.
And I built my business that way, but there's been some things I've made a ton on that I didn't know I was going to make a ton on. Some of this stuff is just really just like them cards I bought in 78 in Chicago. I still have some of them today. There were so many of them, but there's lots of $100 bills come out of them boxes that I didn't, expect to make that kind of money.
Yeah.
That's probably the buy that put me in it, what got me in the business. And then after that, I just bought everything to come at me because it was so cheap back then. Now I wish I'd have bought more.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky. The guy that owned Walmart, or the president, David Glass, his son, Donnie Glass, was a good friend of mine. And we traveled around and did some shows together. Donnie owned a store in Northwest Arkansas. So I got around him and stuff. And he was always buying big collections and stuff. And I helped him on some of his stuff. Just things like that, people involved in it. But now all the older guys are gone. I'm finding out a lot of people are calling me now. And, I'm not an expert on it, but I'm a lot better than I realized.
Yeah.
And I worked with a lot of autograph guys. I've had well over 100 players. I've actually had them come into malls and sign autographs and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I did work with Mickey Mantle 3 or 4 times in the late 90s.
Wow.
I was actually with him last time he was with Billy Martin in Memphis.
Okay.
Billy, it was the weekend before Thanksgiving. Whitey Ford, Mickey, and Billy were there doing a signing at the college. And I was involved in that. And we took them back to the airport and had to sit there and get drunk with them. Them guys drunk. Man, they drink. And Billy got on the plane and Mickey got on. And that about a month before that, they were at Joplin. They had a golf tournament, the Mickey Mantle charity tournament, and they were there. And we talked Mickey and Billy into going to Memphis. And then he died Christmas Eve. We were there the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Right.
That was the last time Mickey seen him. And then next March, Mickey comes to Joplin, walks up to me. Last time I saw Billy was with you. And it was like, get me out of here. These people wouldn't leave him alone. They were bugging him.
Yeah.
Billy Martin, they were. And then even the next year in October, he was there signing. I think he signed more Billy Martin pictures than he did for himself.
Yeah.
People were so glad that Billy was there the year before.
Yeah.
But it was really special to me with work. Actually, how I got with Mickey was I was bowling one night and he came in the bowling alley and they were pot bowling. And I actually won some money from him. I beat some of the local bowlers. And this is 2 a.m. when the doors closed.
Yeah.
And Mickey goes, didn't I see you out there at the deals? Yeah. Well, a couple of months later, this guy goes, you need money? He goes, Tim's in this business. Mickey goes, you're in the sports book? I said, yeah. How come you haven't asked me for any autograph? I looked at him. I said, well, isn't that what you do for a living nowadays? And he goes, well, that's part of it. Because he'd signed a deal with Scoreboard at that time for $500,000 to sign for a year. And so I made a deal. I said, you want to make a deal? We'll sit down. So I took him to a couple of malls and signed autographs, and he did very well.
That's cool.
And he wouldn't sign bats because them guys were stealing from him.
Oh.
Guys would come up, oh, would you sign this for my grandkid? Next day, he'd see it on the wire. This was before eBay.
Yeah.
So he was real skeptical. He got ripped off quite a bit by people.
Yeah,
I was
can imagine.
Pretty honest with him. So we kind of got to be friends. Just a couple of years, and then he disappeared about 91. And I guess he was living with a lady down in Texas area. Then we heard he had cancer and died in 95, I think it was. But I got to work with a lot of great guys, Enos Slaughter, Bob Feller, two of the greats. They loved the game. You put them in a crowd of people, they didn't care about the money. They loved that they were baseball players.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I connected with that with guys like Harold Leap and Lees and my dad they loved what they did. Is why they raced. It wasn't about money. Them guys loved it. I just remember Kansas City. My dad raced with Craig Weld, Kenny Weld, and Jerry Weld every week. And he won his share against them. And after the races, you go down there and these guys are in a big ball. And you couldn't tell who won.
Yeah.
And it was like they were having the time of their lives. And it was just that. I remember that so much, the grins on their face. And I remember Dad one day was sitting at home and Mom goes, "What is wrong with you?" He goes, "My face is hurting. I was laughing so hard last night, my jaws ache." And, I mean, I don't know if people knew the Welds very well. I got to be around them. Jerry Weld was solid earth. I mean, my sister had open heart surgery in about 68 at Children's Mercy Hospital. Jerry come down there with about 25 race car drivers. Pittman, we're giving blood in case he needs.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry took me down the street and, we had ice cream and all kinds of stuff. And then, deals like that. And I was so sad to hear him. He got hit by a car in Kansas City about 1970, I think it was. I always loved him. But I got to race around them guys, and boy, they were just pure competitors.
Yeah.
Kenny Weld, I remember he ran second, third, fourth all the time, didn't win much. He went and won the Knoxville Nationals in 64. He come back a different race car driver.
Yeah.
He got confidence up there. Wow, look at that. He's up against the wall like his brother. My dad goes around turn 3 or 4 at the peak and you can't see the wall no more, know. And that's how them guys learned, was racing against them guys. I guess Kenny Weld leading the Nationals with your brother and guys like that on your tail, it's going to make you, you're more scared of losing than you are winning. You know what I mean? And I think that made some great race car drivers.
Yeah.
I remember my dad, Harvey Shane, told my dad he was going to kill him. Ooh. He actually told everybody. And Topeka, he pulled off in the infield behind this concrete pillar thing and pulled out in front of my dad.
Oof.
Dad run about 110 mile an hour is what we figured. That's the wreck that should have killed him. He woke up a couple hours later, but deals like that makes you
feel iffy.
Yeah.
So as far as going to races and stuff, do you go on a weekly basis or just kind of hit the big ones?
I own them stores and I'm in them 65 hours a week. I take February, March, April, May this year. I'm off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. Everybody else work.
Someone managing the store.
That's how I'm up here. Yeah. Well, Joplin, I close it down 3 months every year.
Oh, okay.
I told them, I said, I've got to get out. I traveled when I was a kid in the back seat of a car, and then I did all this traveling. I got to get the hell out of here. I'm going to go crazy. That's honestly the truth.
Yeah.
Nothing furthered me was I've drove 800 miles in the last 5 days. I haven't been home 5 days.
Yeah.
Because I've been out buying these collections. And I thought, I'm going to go up there anyway, even though they didn't have the race last night, because it's on the way to Kansas City.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to go up there, and then I'll be around the NASCAR race too this week.
Okay.
But I always try to go. I stay informed with it, and I've got all this stuff. I try to spend a few hours a week adding pictures and trying to, be friendly. These Facebook pages are free, and it's for history.
Right.
So if you got an old grandpa or great grandpa or brother, sister, something that never raced, go on there. You can go on there. You got any Joe Blow pictures or Harvey Smith? If we got them, we'll try to find them for you and help you out.
Yes. So I think our last last guest we had in studio was Don Green, who's a local legend engine builder around here.
Yeah, I see his name a lot.
Yep.
I've never met him. I'd like to.
He's awesome. Yeah. I've known him all my life, but he was on here and then he, after the show, he said, I'm going to put you on some of these Facebook pages, cause that's history
There you
stuff.
go.
So he added me right to yours. And then of course you and I touched base and
For some of these guys, I wish
you added me to the other two. And
like, I know some of these guys like Davy Ross and Leaps. I've never met
Emily
Leap, but I've talked to her on Facebook.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, I've never met them. Like I've met Jim Petty and some of them.
Yeah.
But I like to meet some more than people because I interact with them all the time. Roger Burnett and Dodge City has got that page going out there. I've been, when are you going to get a place to put this stuff right and come out? And I should have went on out there. I had a time that I could have run out there for a day and I just didn't get it done.
Yeah.
But it's just great. The history out in here is so wonderful. I know the entire history of how Don Edmonds Super Modifieds got here.
Yeah.
I talked to Don about it on the phone. I actually have his original molds off the car that's pictured on the magazine in '66.
Okay.
We bought them by accident in Dodge City, me and David Johnson. And I have them molds. And I was making a nose piece, and the number 54 kept coming out in the piece. I'm like, what the hell? So we're looking at the mold, and you can see it.
Okay.
So I thought, I'm going to call Don.
It in there.
So I called Don Edmonds. He goes, go look at the tailpiece. I said, he goes, see them notches? He goes, when you set it on the back of the frame, just push it a little bit, snap. You don't have to bend it to get it past the rear bars and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he goes, son, you got my original molds. Where'd you get them at? Well, he sent, in 1966, that car come out on the magazine. They're 86-inch super modified, just like the sprint car. He had never built a 100-inch car. So Isaac Trucking got a hold of him and ordered a brand new car. And they sent it out here, the first 100-inch car ever built.
Okay.
It was a roller. Okay. Ray Cates in Tulsa. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Denny Moore. He was an Indy 500 winning mechanic. He built a lot of the cars for Zink in Tulsa. And Ray Cates got Denny. They bought a kit from Edmonds, and they put that car together, which is the 2 Ford car that Harold Leap won Tulsa with in '69. Al Emmons drove it the first year. They had really problems getting that car set up, so I think Harold had to get the Wichita guys with the BCRAs, and they put the right setup on there. And Leap, I suggest put a good spanking on everybody. but them were the couple of the first, and I think Isaac ordered another one that was the 6-car Dale Reed. And then Jelly Wilhelm built one, copied. He looked at that technology and built the 112 car. Okay. And them guys made them cars faster. And the cars he built were, Jelly Wilhelm, man, the guy was, like unreal, some of the stuff he did. And he don't get as much credit as he deserves. Like these car builders, Al Weiland's another one. Denny Moore out of Tulsa was wonderful. And when I was talking to Don Edmonds, he goes, you know that Moore guy in Tulsa? And I said, yeah, Denny Moore. I just talked to him last week. That's another thing I want to talk to you about. Well, the Edmonds cars were built about 34 inches wide. And Don had quit building the Edmonds cars. He still built some sprint cars in the late 60s, which is one Gordon Woolley had. And then Kenny Greitz won the National with the 69. Okay. The results from them cars, Denny was saying, well, what's up new, He called that guy because it was his car. He said, what's up? What's new? He goes, if I was going to still build them supers. Now, Don was building Indy cars then. Okay. He goes, if I was going to build them, I'd build them skinnier like the sprint cars. Because the sprint cars are beating on them guys. That Greitz boy just tore them up in Knoxville. he's a young kid, you know.
Yeah.
So he said, build it narrower. So before the 70 season, Denny built the 1300 car that Jackie Howerton drove.
I don't know that one.
Now, everybody knows this car that's anything to do with Tulsa. The car raced for a decade. Now, Jackie Howerton drove it in 70 when Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Mid 71, Jackie got called to USAC. I think he won the Hoosier 100 one year. Turned out to be a hell of a race car driver. He's one of the great fabricators up there for them guys for years. Mid-season, Emmett Hahn climbs in the car. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been driving the Del Torrance car and won the first NCRA race at Tulsa. So he'd kind of been following them guys around. Like I tell you learn from the best.
Yeah.
And Emmett chased my dad for years. And then he's chasing Jackie and Harold Leap and them guys. He got in that 1300 car. And if I remember right, he come up to Hutch. In 71 was the first one to win Hutch. It was a non-Kansas driver. But that car, if you sit in the car, I can't sit in it. My elbows stick out.
Oh, it's tiny.
I got to get in here. It's
Yeah.
there. But that car was only around 30, 31 inches wide. Right in there. The other Edmunds was wider. When he built that car, it just put a spanking on everybody. Well, then more and more of them started showing up that way because they you copy what's faster.
Right.
But Denny, even though he's a great guy and everything, he learned, he did the right thing. He called the guy, how are you going to make your stuff faster? And he got the information from the right place, plus what he knew, which was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Added it to that car. Okay. That car won 6 Tulsa Speedway championships from 1970 to 78. 6 out of 9 years.
Yeah. Pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, Leap was running down there and Frankie'd be showing up, Lee's and Ray Crawford. Really good, really good guys, tough guys down there. And he come up here and did well in Hutch every year. I think I'm not sure about his NCRA, but I know he had 2, maybe 3 titles in NCRA in that car. That car ran 10 years. That's unheard of nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
And another car like that was the tank that Pappy Weld built. Kenny won just in a super modified in 64 in Knoxville. And then Pappy built the tank in 65. Kenny won in Knoxville the second year in a row. Then that car went to Amarillo Nationals with Bob Williams, Tiger Bob Williams.
Okay, I've heard of that.
And I think Bob won the first night, and Bobby Ward won the second night. But it won there, and that car won. Bob Williams never won the Nationals, but man, he was top 5 several times. That car, and then plus he drove for Jack Cunningham and the Luther Brewer car that Thad Dozier won the Nationals with. Bob Williams started driving for Cunningham and 2 or 3 top 5s in the Nationals. That car, the tank lasted, it was built before 65. Ricky Weld drove it in 71. So that was a long time for a car like that. And then the T-Coupe that Luther Brewer drove was built. My dad drove for him and sat down with Luther to build that car. And we were building a house, and Dad decided, he took a couple of bad flips that year and decided, I'm not going to travel this year. He wanted an enclosed cockpit. That's where they come up with the T-Coupe.
Okay.
And then I remember Dad told me, he said, I'm building a house down here. My kid just got in. It was me. I just got MVP in Little League Baseball or Cub Scout baseball.
Yeah.
And my wife's going to kill me, So he started racing locally down there, Joplin. And then Ray Lee tore up everything and just won like crazy. But that's how they built that car. But that car, Bob Williams, Jack Cunningham took him to Amarillo. He won the Amarillo Nationals in that car, which is something. The car won Knoxville, Lincoln, Topeka, Kansas City championships. That was I don't know how long that car lasted. And I think somebody has it's rebuilding. Don't quote me on that, but a car still exists somewhere.
Oh, wow.
But the longevity, them 3 cars are amazing. How
Yeah.
long they last.
Unheard of.
Yeah, it's just I wish I had the full histories on them. I've just been starting to do the one on the Emmett Hahn car that Denny Moore built, but they kept that car from 1970 to the end of '78. Then Jackie Howerton built them a new car for '79. And there's a picture of it in 80, 81 where they're identical, sitting beside each other with sprint car tails on.
Oh.
It's pretty neat. You know, Emmett, I watched Emmett Hahn Russ start in his early 60s, in the mid 60s. And he caught my eye for some reason. I'm like, that guy gets a faster car, and I think he's going to be fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, didn't win, but he was right there. You know, and all of a sudden, he gets in Joe Cox's 33. And here's a funny story. In 1967, they had the Southwest Missouri Nationals. It was a 50 lapper. Emmett Hahn got the pole. He led it for 49 laps, and my dad passed him on the last lap. And if you bring that up to him, he's like, well, here's why. About 2 weeks before that at Neosho, 71 Speedway, a little bit south of Joplin, Dad was leading one of the big races, and Dwayne Beckham, good race car driver, following Dad. Dad got a little tied up on some lap traffic going into turn 3. Dwayne got a run off the top, beat him to the flag. And
nosed him out.
On the way home from that race where Dad passed him, Mom goes, why the hell didn't you pass him? You drove us all crazy. He goes, I wasn't going to give Emmett Hahn the same opportunity that Dwayne Beckham had.
Yeah.
I didn't want him chewing on me for a dozen laps.
Yeah.
And I told Emmett that story, and that's respect.
Yeah.
You know, but Dad was able, he studied him a long time, was able, Emmett just about got him back away from him. But it was a hell of a fight. But Emmett just kept getting better and better and better. And then Jackie Howerton helped build that Del Torrance car in 1970. He come up touch and got the pole. We got knocked out of the race early. You could tell Jackie's going to be a great driver. Then Danny Moore built the Zinc car. Jackie jumped in the Del Torrance car. Or Emmett Hahn jumped in the Del Torrance, won the NCRA race in Tulsa. First one they had there. Got everybody's attention. Nobody's seen that coming. This kid, I seen him coming. He was a good race car driver. And I don't think the best drivers, a lot of them, you never see them coming. All of a sudden, wow, they're winning all the time. How'd that happen?
Yeah.
Emmett was a clean driver, never draw a lot of attention. And
yeah.
There's a picture of him when he won the 70 NCRA race at Tulsa. Him and Frankie Lees are battling. And you know, Frankie was awesome on the tri-slick. He's trying to pass on Emmett on the outside. He's running that higher groove. Emmett stood his ground. And when you stood the ground with Frankie Lees, most times than not, you didn't come out on top. Well, Emmett came out on top. He stood up. There was a picture of Frankie's car about 6 foot in the air in the back. He just got the lucky hit, you know.
Yeah.
And Emmett was able to get by him on that deal. But Emmett got better, and then he landed that Zinc car. And to win the races he did for the next decade, he became a very good race car driver.
Yeah.
If I had to put a top 20 list, Emmett's on that list.
Yeah.
It's like Lee's and
Emmett Hahn's been suggested to me from one of the members that I need to get a hold of, and I'd like to.
They put him in the High Banks Hall of Fame here a while back. He's a wonderful guy. Blake Hahn.
Right. We see him quite a bit. He's picked up a bunch of races here.
Okay, it's his nephew, I believe. All the Hans are all Hans to me.
I thought
Tommy Hans.
I thought it was his grandson.
Yeah. Okay, it's family.
Right.
Tommy Hans, I guess his boy, and then Blake's their son. I look at him as all the same, you know.
Yeah.
But Blake's around all the time. But I know Emmett's so busy with the Chili Bowl and everything.
Right.
And he's got that Creek County. He's always promoting the local races around there. He's working with them. Him and Jackie were down there at Creek there a few weeks back signing autographs. Then the other place over there, Port City Raceway, wonderful little track. They run the kids classes,
run the
and
micros and stuff over
They
there.
go over there, and there's 6 or 7 old racing legends from the area. They do it. They do it. Try to do it like you guys do up here. But Emmett Hahn would be a wonderful speaker. I mean, he's just. I still talk to him today. I can get his attention because I was at a lot of the races he run.
Right.
And I bring up stuff, and he looks at you. You remember that? And it's because I loved it just as much as he did.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful talking about it. You
Yeah.
know? Well, Emmett's just saw to me. Emmett Hahn inventing the Chili Bowl like he did with Lanny Edwards,
mm-hmm.
and the way they did that is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I'm probably more proud of Emmett Hahn than any racer I know because of what he's done with that. If you think the Chili Bowl is something special, you ought to go down the 2 or 3 weeks before that. They have the shootout for all them kids.
Oh, yeah, the shootout's awesome.
My God, these kids, they learn how to grin there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing. I mean,
well, we're about an hour and 40 into this.
Oh boy, time flies
and
when you're having fun, buddy.
I appreciate you being here.
No,
I appreciate you reaching out,
and
I'm glad you stayed around, even though we didn't get to race last night. I'm glad you got here. Race fans, thank you for being a part of Above the Cushion here for Thursday nights. We appreciate Tim for coming in and giving a talk. We want to remind everyone Friday night, tomorrow night over at Humboldt, weekly championship points racing going to take center stage. And then right here at Saturday night, live on Racing Dirt, as well as here is the Speedway. We'd love to have you here for weekly championship points racing. Can't forget next week, May 10th and 11th, the World of Outlaws Extreme Midgets are going to visit us once again. Of course, the Extreme Midget Outlaws, they have posted some videos from last year's races, just kind of reminding us what happened. It's a very technical race over at Humboldt, and then they come here to 81, and it is a speed fest. Of course, Chase McDermott picking up both races. He swept the weekend last year. I believe we're going to try to get him on next week and give him a talking, see what's going on with his racing this year, and see what as we move forward to the Extreme Outlaws on May 10th and 11th for Humboldt and 81 Speedway. On behalf of JR and Katie Sartain, GM John Allen, and everyone with FOE Enterprises, want to thank you for being a part here tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening. Don't forget, live on Facebook every Thursday and live on the YouTube channel as well. We'll post those links to the Facebook page for Tim. Appreciate everyone. We'll see you next week.